Dr. Sternglass knew the risk. A silent war, invisible twist. From the fallout clouds to the gamma rays, he saw the truth in a poisoned haze. They laughed him off, they turned away, but the radiation never fades away. Dr. Sternglass, can you hear us now?
Hello everybody, welcome back. We've got a great show, a crazy show. To top off a crazy week, we've covered some of the best stuff this a long time, this particular week. I'm Dana. I'm in Canada. You can call in 709-589-4406. We got a ridiculous amount to get through. So we're going to get after it. There's 736 pictures that came out. And nobody's ever covered them, only me. And we've covered them twice. And so we're getting pretty good now. And so will you. Here we go. Just make sure everything is working here. Hi, everybody. Maybe Alan Caldecott will call in. Let's try, Dana, buddy. Bless your heart. Alrighty, so we're going to cover pictures. We're going to, I've never covered the raw pictures because I've always zoomed in. What it is, it's 736 pictures from a drone, a high quality drone originally. I'm assuming the first couple of days, and they were released in 2021 in January. I found them on a Chinese site about Fukushima that I translated because I'm a sucker for punishment. But there was no reference in the story, and underneath, as I scroll down to check the comments, which is normal, there was a bunch of links to the TEPCO's website. And of course, once I clicked the first link here, I had a compressed folder of pictures, and I was like, what's this? So I downloaded everything. It was 736 pictures. It turned out you have to zoom in to appreciate what you're looking at. And so the reactors were pixelated out. The common spent fuel pool was pixelated out. Reactor 6 was pixelated, and the pumphouse was pixelated out. And the southeast corner was a large section pixelated out. And so, it's definitely worth your time to check this stuff out. So I've set this up. Hopefully this will go okay. The preamble that I'm going to do for you is the site. I'm going to show you maps of the site. I'm going to show you some tsunami, and then we're just going to jump into it because 736 pictures is a lot of picture. And you know how retarded I am. I brought in another 200 for entertainment because why not, right? It's the last show of the week. Just push myself to the limit. I got to admit, though, bird tip before you start the show. So don't expect me to be Mr. Energy Bunny Rabbit or anything. Not that I actually ever am. So this is on the seaside. And so when you see pictures like this, so the drone pictures you can tell the drones are drone pictures. They're from up high and blah, 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 right? So when you see these types of pictures, that's pictures of the 1900 pictures that were released that I don't think anybody's ever covered, only me. In fact, I know they didn't. And so that's almost 3,000 pictures that I covered that nobody else on the planet has ever covered. Because it's boring, right? So I got to show you. So when you see pictures like this, you know that's the pictures from the 1900 lot. It's almost 2,000, but let's say 19. I actually done a 6 video presentation on them. I have 2 presentations dedicated to the drone with the pixelated pictures. Here we go. And because it's such a complicated story, I got to kind of give you background, give you some documentation. That won't take very long. So the orange, brownish colors up there are the reactor buildings. You can see the common spent fuel pool. I can use myself as a pointer. That's why I bought this particular equipment, because there's nothing I can't do with it. Now, I could have bought a Lamborghini, but I didn't. But I built this operation so that we can fight back against something that the world is going to learn about at some point. And let's make sure they got a good foundation. So the common spent storage facility is right across from Unit 4 reactor building. So right across the street, it's on the same street. And reactor 3, reactor 2, reactor 1, and pump houses, etc. The long rectangular ones. We'll go right through everything. This is the administration building. This is behind, and this is caused by the blast, I'm assuming, from reactor 3, 4, 1, and 2. I've been looking forward to doing this show all week, but we were doing legacy stories to match up with 14 years. So 14 years ago today type stories for the anniversary. And then last week we covered just amazing. So the last 2 weeks we've covered, if you've never seen anything, you only covered the last 2 weeks, watched that stuff, or just took screen captures of it, you have one of but the best archive on the planet of this information, period, bar nothing. There's nothing out there any better than what we bring you. It's an educational program. And so the common spent fuel pool is important, the placement of it. And it had 4 decades of reactor cores from 6 reactors. The excess stuff that they moved out of the reactor buildings, that's where they would move it to, is the common spent fuel storage pool. So as the site expands, you can see there's a lot more to this site. It's a big site. It's a small city. And I'm just putting there I'm putting this here so you can stop it later or stop it whenever, and you can get a handle on it all. I can't digress on every single picture because we have almost 1,000 pictures. That'll go pretty smooth because the stuff from the ocean takes up a lot of the numbers, but there's a reason they done that, to release the pictures. We don't know who released the pictures and why they released the pictures on the 10th anniversary, the 10th year rather. So you can see the seawater levels. This is really important. This is really important. I lost my bearings that time. It was like I was on the ocean again for some reason. So this was the height of the seawater, the turbine buildings, the reactor buildings. I'm going to show you some tsunami pictures so you can really appreciate the level of that. And what was right behind where my finger is was the common spent fuel pool. So that's kind of important when you're talking about an extinction event. And so when you see pictures like this is the pictures from the 1900s, but we're covering the zoom shots, right? In particular, tonight we're focused on that. But you're going to need some context because the zoom shots are from up high, right? And then we have the luxuries of zooming in, right? We're going to take full advantage of that. I get the zoom set on a bit quick because otherwise it might take forever to get through it. Well, that's on 5 seconds. Let me put it on 10 seconds. No, that's not it. I'll get there. Okay. I'll get there, I swear. You know, the only one I didn't save was zoomed all the way out. So let me save that. Down here it'll be. All right. Don't worry, we'll get there. So this is the common spent fuel pool right here. And now, this particular picture I'm already zoomed in, believe it or not, right? And this is where I had my holy shit moment in 2021 in January when I was trying to say to myself, what was the point of these drone pictures? Because, you know, they look like this, so it doesn't really You're like, I don't know what's going on anymore. But well, to our utter horror, when you zoomed in, this is what you were seeing. And when you continue to zoom in and just... so this was transport truck containers washed up behind the common spent fuel pool. There'll be a lot of mistakes like this going on tonight, so get used to it. So this was transport truck containers, and this is the common spent fuel pool, and up at the top center is reactor 4. And then the question is, why is that so pixelated? And so when I finally zoomed in, and by the way, see reactor 4 there? And you'll see reactor 3, 2, and 1, quite a bit of it, but that'll be the only pictures where you actually see it. After that, all the pictures were pixelated out. I don't know why they've done that, but that's what they're doing. So the common spent fuel pool, and then there's reactor 6, was pixelated out. Here we go. So remember, the tsunami, even this is their emissions, right? The scale of inundation, it was actually much higher than that, because there was tsunami came in on top of a tsunami, and it came in at several hundred miles per hour. Alrighty, we're almost there. No, that one we're already zoomed in on, but you can see another shot of the common spent fuel pool. It's on the same street as reactor 4. And you're at the southerly end of the site almost. Now here's another one of the site we need to zoom in on to kind of, so you got something to work with later that you can come back and look at. I'll make it easier for you. I'll get my big head out of the way for a minute. So you don't always got to stare at that big noggin. The Geiger counter's real time. Right here. How about right there? So this one is long after the meltdowns. So this is with all the additions, the tanks, the containers, etc., etc. So if you're trying to figure this out on your own later, and you're looking at stuff and you're trying to appreciate what you're looking at and where it's to, now you got a wonderful, hopefully you got a wonderful, and let me zoom in a bit more. All right. So one of the pictures is going to be up in the southeast corner, which is up here, where I'm to. And I think it's this street right here. Now everything's changed since the pictures that I'm going to show you coming up. But there's a section right around here that was pixelated out. And there was other landmarks there, like buildings and that were very distinct. They were removed and replaced. And that's just to give you a reference later, right? Here we go. All right. No, we're not ready yet. We're going to get to tsunami. This goes fast. So the tsunami came in at hundreds of miles per hour. And that tank, the center tank, got moved over that way to the north. And this tank got crushed. Remember that? We'll see pictures of that coming up. So the tsunami came in. Now you can see that tank up there is an atmospheric pressure. It's 30-something feet there, say, which is 14.5 pounds per square inch. And that caused the volume, the air volume inside the tank to shrink. And what that done was it caused the tank to deform itself. So you can see right here the tsunami is coming through the plant right at this stage. This is the employees that ran up on the roof. And that's the reactor straight ahead. So they're over. They're one of those buildings across the street to the east of the reactor. So you can see the tsunami now moving in. See the tsunami getting bigger, and then you see this absolute turbulence, which matches up with the height of the water you see up there, right? Okay. So the tsunami came in. There was multiple tsunamis came in on top of each other. They built these things right on the tectonic plates. So now the tsunami is starting to go back out. Eventually you can see cars are piled up, and as the water goes back out, and you're really not going to see these pictures anywhere else. So anything I'm showing you tonight. And then the whole narrative, hopefully, there's enough time for me to get through everything. I can't even imagine, thinking about your home and your families, and you're on top of this nuclear power plant and the tsunamis around it. You can see damage to the doors down there. So this takes out all the infrastructure. This like a, because you're talking about a huge volume of water at very high speeds coming through your site. So that's going to just disable and destroy everything that's functional. And they don't build electronics up high because that's counterproductive, right, for the installation, the maintenance, and everything else. Cost of admitting the truth about Fukushima is so great that Japan won't admit it. And that's enough to make you question whether you should live in Tokyo. Well, you shouldn't live in Tokyo. So to give you a little bit more context, we'll look at the reactors for about another minute and a half. The fuel pools were at the top of the buildings, the reactor cores at the top of the buildings, and reactor 3 over there, which was the plutonium mixed oxide reactor, you're talking about 8 reactor cores are gone in that particular building alone. They built this contraption off-site, installed it over the reactor, then claimed they got the fuel out of it in 2021. The same year, the pictures that we're going to go through tonight were released. On burn mocks, fuel containing plutonium was in a mushroom-like cloud of black smoke. So this releases radiation forever, right? The radiation never stops splitting atoms. And so the particulates that are being released are splitting atoms also. There was the administration building. And that took a pounding from the explosions of the reactors that are now at the top of your screen. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in and pull that down because otherwise we're going to have to zoom on every picture. Well, we're going to have to zoom on a lot of these pictures, but not every picture because it'll just take too long. You don't have that kind of time. Alrighty, and so those pictures of the tsunami were probably taken off of this building or that building right there, just for reference points. That's the administration building over there. And all of these places right there, you got to remember, reactor cores went up and came back down on the site. They went up over 1 kilometer in reactor 3, and then they came back down. So it's a very, very dangerous site. So, and this is basically what happened to me was I was looking at the reactors and I wasn't paying attention, and I started to realize, wait a second, because when you're looking at the original pictures from the drone, you're looking at that. So I said, well, I zoomed in, just like we're doing right now, and I'm looking at the buildings, and this is the only pictures where you actually get to see that much of the buildings. So why was all of this pixelated was the question that I ended up having to ask myself. And you can see the hole in the roof up here. That was from some of the assemblies that went into the pump house. When you talk about the highly radioactive water in the older stories, in the pump houses, is because obviously assembly of some type went into the building, and there's 2 big holes there, so that's at least 2. Then it went in at high speeds, and they would have melted down. And we back up. So then the question starting to form in my head, I started realizing I'm looking at pixelated pictures. And I was like, holy shit, this is huge. But it takes a while because they're not going to sugarcoat everything and put it on a plat for you and you can figure it all out, right? Don't ask me what a plat is, I don't know. Dana. And then that's towards the ocean down here. And everything. The tsunami, by the way, came right through these sites and came all the way up to this back wall where behind me right there. It'll make sense as we start to ramble on through here. So the seaside up there, if you're on the ground, this is what it would look like on the other side of the pump houses. trying to give you some context, right? So the reactors are this way. The picture I showed you was on the other side of these rectangle buildings, which are called the pump houses. So a lot of the pictures will, like, they took you from the southeast or the southerly, easterly side of the site, and then they ran right straight out towards the reactors, and then they run out to the ocean. And they do that kind of routine quite a bit. It kind of gives you context. So not all 736 pictures are going to be holy smoke stuff, right? But it gives you context, and because you have the latitude now where you can zoom in, and we will, and we got these buildings will come up many times, right? You start to get a really big handle on this site pretty quickly, the damage and everything. Anyway, keep going here. Back up for a couple. So that goes out to the ocean. I'll show in a couple of pictures. We're still going to see the other pictures. So these were released in a batch of 1,900 plus pictures from TEPCO, and you can go to TEPCO's website, and you if you look for pictures, photos, you'll find these pictures, these big ones. You can see damage from the earthquake on the ground up there. Liquefaction, I guess, or something. You can see people in paper suits at a nuclear meltdown. Multiple. Now, these pictures were taken quite a long while after. But because everything is, we're trying to cover 90% of it or more is from the drones, I figured to put in a few of these pictures just to kind of break it up a bit. So a paper suit can protect you at a nuclear meltdown. And TEPCO, you had put out media saying they burn 17,000 of those paper suits a day. So this is down by the seaside, and the green you're looking at is a reagent. Now, whoever sprayed that reagent would have died that day. They were considered disposable people. And that's mostly the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants who don't speak the language, which is what the industry does. There is no nuclear... Well, we're hoping the nuclear scientists will visit the site somewhere in the next couple of thousand years, because I can guarantee you they ain't going to be going in your lifetime. So when you see the green region, that means danger in overdrive. What it is that particulates, fuel particulates have landed there, and the region is supposed to bind on them and stop them from splitting atoms, trying to lower the dose. And then whoever is there doing this, now he's not taking the picture. There's somebody a little far away with a zoom taking the pictures. But whoever is there with their finger, they are no longer alive. It'd be safe to assume. This is the back of reactor 4. Those stacks, they look close, but they're actually not. They're so lethal, you'll die right. Was dispersed in an explosion. And same thing clearly for reactor 3 and reactor 4. Reactor 2 burnt constantly for days. So this is not a nuclear academic that's doing this. This is not a nuclear scientist. This is not a journalist. This is not an engineer. Excuse me. Yeah, so whoever done this would have died that day for sure. This is just horrifying pictures. It's unconscionable that they had somebody do this. You should strongly disrespect the nuclear industry and International Atomic Energy Agency for allowing anybody to be in that position. You'll never have an interview where, yeah, that was me, I was there, and the boss with all the tattoos told me to go over and stand up there and pick up some of that stuff. I got $2,000 for it. And he said, come in tomorrow and pick up the check. And unfortunately, he died that day. Never couldn't pick up his check. There's thousands of stories like that. It's just it's unbelievable that these pictures even exist. Oh, man. You'll never see these pictures anywhere else. On top of that, Yeah, he looks like a nuclear scholar to me. Was that he got Harvard written on a tattoo on his chest or something? Harvard University won't even go to Japan. They wouldn't even let their art go to exhibit in Fukushima Prefecture. Remember that story from years ago? This is the moment where he went, oh shit, I don't feel so good. Hey, pick it up. Pick it up. Okay. It's extra $100. I'm in. You see the big cement hanging down up there? I'm assuming that's reactor 3. That's the Medusas of Medusas. This was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor. Whoever went in there and took these pictures, they would have died. And anybody that close to Medusa in the early days, they're dead. No, we had one story where there was over 800 ashes of workers. They died and they had cremated them right away. They were so radioactive, they couldn't bury them. They didn't tell anybody. There wasn't a body count. And so he's definitely one of the guys got like, that's the craziest job. If I was in that position, someone told me to go over and do that, I'd kick him in the nuts and run away as quick as I could. It's just the pictures they're the most absurd pictures conceivable. Okay, so that's where we kind of left off. Was the drone was headed out to the ocean, and there's not really anything to glean that I'm not gonna show you coming up anyway. And so these types of pictures we're just gonna kind of just slowly flash through. You never know, because I've done this so much, you might see something that stands out. Not likely. Drone goes out, turns around, and it does this several times and then comes back in. But what it does is when it's coming back in, and I don't know what he really... the only reason I can think about was what he released those particular pictures is because they were trying to sneak out a few pictures in 2021. Whoever released these pictures, they done this for a specific reason. This was a warning to humanity. This was a wake-up call. This was a SOS to humanity. And why weren't these pictures released why were they released a decade later on the 10th year anniversary? It was released in January, not March. But so let me do a quick context here for you. That's reactor 1, what's left of it. Reactor 2, that was reactor 3. That's reactor 4. And right across the street from it was the common spent fuel pool. And so the tsunami ran right through between all the buildings and through the buildings. And now the common spent fuel pool is not a big building. It's on the same street, right across the street from the 4 reactors of the apocalypse. And behind the Fort reactor, or the common spent fuel pool up in the top left-hand corner, you can see transport truck containers piled up because the tsunami went in on both sides, and when it regressed out, they were left piled up. But the question is, why is this building completely pixelated out? How come that one's not, and how come the one on the other side is not? Right? Why is it the 4 reactors? Now, as we get through the pictures, you'll basically stop seeing these, because right now you're seeing little parts of the reactors, less and less each time we go past it. But the pump house, or the common spent fuel pool, is completely pixelated out. But building 1, building 2 across the street weren't. I mean, they're across the street from reactor 3. But the one across the street from reactor 4, which is the common spent fuel pool, which we figured had about 10 million pounds into it. It would be like Chernobyl on steroid if the spent fuel catches fire, says a nuclear engineer who worked at an identical plant. That each reactor holds 3,450 spent fuel assemblies. The assemblies have 100 fuel rods that are 12 feet long and 18 pounds each. So you can do the mathematics. 3,450 times 1,800. To get now, but the spent fuel pools, because you don't have a repository in Japan or anywhere else on the planet, are known to be stuffed. And they even changed the rules where you can get them closer together so they can put more fuel into it. And at this point, they were 40 years old reactors. And this is where they were storing the extra fuel from all 6 reactors was put into the oldest fuel. Not all of it, though. Some of it never ever come out of the fuel pools of the reactors. But fuel that was, say, 20 or 30 years old might get moved to the common spent fuel pool. I saw black smoke coming from the common spent fuel pool chimney. The common spent fuel pool chimney is venting because these fuel that are in pools are still splitting atoms. And just because they're in water, that don't mean that they're going to turn to fairy dust in the next million years. So they boil off each fuel pool of a reactor, not counting common spent fuel pool boils more because it has more. But a typical reactor fuel pool, and there's 2 at the top of each building, each one will boil off at least 120,000 liters each day. It's doing that because the fuel is splitting atoms, so each liter is going to be a dirty bomb released into your community of trillions of anthropogenic man-made isotopes that are harmful to everything with replicating cells. He said, I wonder if it was the smoke of boiler, it's not fire. So he's suggesting it's not fire, but we have headlines where they acknowledged there was a recriticality in the fuel pool. So it must have melted down and it melted down again. And for any fuel pool, all it takes is coolant to stop circulating. And they had power ripped off the country. 2,000 square miles of the country was ripped out to sea, which was the pile that was out the size of Texas out in the Pacific Ocean a year later. So there was over 2,000 square miles of the country got ripped out to sea, houses and buildings and infrastructures, malls and whatever. So if you stop the cooling, and we covered this a lot earlier this week on the anniversary and last week, after even like a half an hour, the fuel starts to bulge because the water's heating up. It needs to circulate all the time. And you have to replenish it every day at least 120,000 liters. Now, this stuff doesn't need oxygen to catch fire and burn. It can burn underwater. It can burn deep into the earth. It has no problem burning for millions of years. It doesn't need water. It doesn't need oxygen, rather. It doesn't have to leak, crack, or fall for fuel to overheat. And once the fuel is exposed, the cladding will catch fire immediately. You know, it's the same material. The zirconium cladding for the fuel is the same material they used to use in the old cameras. But you ever see the cameras back in the 20s, 30s with the great beak flash? And there was a hammer would come up and break the glass, and then the zirconium was exposed to air. And so they said it would take pictures. That's how quick it lights up. That burns at about 1,800 degrees. That'll ignite the fuel pellets and the uranium pellets. And so now we're starting to head away inland, east, towards South Korea. So let's just quickly, because once we click a couple more times. So you can see reactor 4. But on the street side of it is all pixelated out. In between it, which is the stack, which is the vents for the fuel pools of reactor 4 and 3. That vent is completely everything's pixelated out. Same thing for reactor 3. Now the buildings are completely destroyed and lost their inventories on top of it. Reactor 2 has the same attributes, and reactor 1. And then the common spent fuel pool, which is east of reactor 4, and I showed you the map at the beginning, and so you can get contacts later. And the tsunami ran through all of these buildings. The common spent fuel pool is not a very big building. All right, so it starts moving now. I can't remember because... And these are in the order that the pictures were released in. So it's heading towards reactor 5 and 6. It's heading along the coast, but the first thing it has to pass coming up in your view right now, or just jump right to reactor 5 and 6. It skip past the dry storage, and I'll get that, I guess, when we're coming back. So now you're looking at reactor 5 and 6. And reactor... Oh no, you're coming back to reactor 4, I'm sorry. Let me go backwards for 1 second. Oh yeah, it was south. So these pictures that I just showed you beforehand were south. Now they're all filled up with fake tanks, right? We counted all the tanks and all the pictures were released. Most we came up with 750. The tanks were empty because typically you can fill up every tank with a single reactor 6 times every day. The reactors typically need 4,500 1-ton pickup trucks. So that's common spent fuel pool reactor 4. We're heading north. We're in the right zone. Because I use, when I do this story, I usually already have the pictures zoomed in on it. Because you're talking about so many pictures. And when you see this show up, that's pictures from the 1900, and this is the only site that's ever covered those pictures. And so this is the original drone view, and it took a few moments for my eyes to realize there's something really weird with the pictures. And I was looking at it, I was like, it's all pixelated. And I was like, why is it all pixelated? You know, and I was like, oh shit, why is it all pixelated? Like, it caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that, not even for a moment. And so now you're starting to see less of reactor 4, but the common spent fuel pool to my left, across the street from it, is 100% completely pixelated out. So they pixelated everything between reactor 4 from the east side of it, all the way to the east side of the common spent fuel pool. And I showed you the maps earlier, you can refer to later if you're just joining us. And now it's marching slowly but surely. The pixelation, I don't know how it's turning up on your tablatures or phones, so I'm kind of just going to zoom in for a lot of these shots. And you can also use the holes in the pump houses. It took 7 years before they finally put something over that hole. And supposing an explosion at reactor 3 drove the nuclear fuel out of the storage pool and the reactor core and scattered up to 2 miles away. And so when you look at the explosions, remember these buildings are 19 stories, 65 meters, 190 foot buildings. And the one that blew up reactor 3 in that particular picture would have looked identical to my finger right there. They're 150 feet square on each side, 190 feet tall. So that explosion actually ejected the fuel pools and the reactor cores right out of the buildings. And that was visible in the videos, by the way. And we don't have a video of reactor 4 for some reason. They have videos and they won't release it. In fact, they won't even acknowledge it. So this, once they started cleaning up with the remote control cranes and excavators and the homeless, this is what they were left with. So remember, the fuel pools reactor cores were at the very top of the building at about 140 feet, 150 to 160 feet up. And so you're looking at about 35 to 40 feet to the bottom of the panel. That's like the destruction of the building is really something. We got other shots coming up. I mean, this really does tell the story. The explosion tells you the story. If that was your apartment building and you seen that picture, would you be thinking you're going to be going back to your office anytime ever? All right. So hopefully we're headed over to reactor 6 at this stage. And then the building up there in the center left is the administration building. So it's pretty stunning that all these pictures, and that's reactor 1 up there. Well, none of these reactors exist, and there was 8 fuel pools at the top of each of the buildings. So now we're starting to head north. And in the top center, a little bit right, is the pump house. I'm sorry, the dry storage. Let me go backwards. And we're going to come back to that one in a moment. So that was the dry storage. And that's much closer to the ocean, much lower, right? And so we know from the pictures that the tsunami ran right through the building completely. And we know from the interior pictures that came out. This, by the way, this picture here is 4 sides of reactor 4. And the fuel pools and the reactor cores of each of the buildings were identical. And you never see that picture anywhere either. I can just get it away if you ever want to take a screen capture. Okay, so then you see this object right there. And we were able to identify that. Oh, that's not the right one. We were able to identify that particular object. Now that is moved because that stood out. That was unique. And that seems to be right there. It seems to be behind me this way. This way. Is the exit for the site. Is that way over there. Or behind me, that way I'm pointing. That's the exit you would normally get in and off the site. That's the entrance exit, right? And so this looks like it could have been around the gatehouse. Like when you come through, they had a big structure. The road was divided into multiple lanes on each side of it. And that appeared to be, we don't know why that was pixelated out. We don't know what else was there. But clearly it's pixelated out. Let me zip in on that a bit. And I apologize if I seem awkward because this is very awkward what I'm doing here. And we've had a very long week. It's been a trying week. We've done a really hard stories the whole week in order to try to, because it's the anniversary, we were trying to get the information out there so that other people had another narrative than the propaganda narrative that was coming from every direction worldwide at the same time, right? And because I'm censored so heavily for so long, that doesn't mean I'm not going to do the best show I can. It's a ridiculous amount of work. I'm not whining and sniveling per se. And so that spot, I'm going to come back to it in a minute. You see that? Now, because this is later, right? This configuration, this is years later. So it's completely different then than it is now. But that section that we're talking about was up here somewhere. Or maybe even right there. Excuse me. But because they changed everything, right? They built so much on it, it no longer looks the same, right? So that's the section there anyway. And if you go that way, if you go that way right here, I'll get it in a second. Because I had to reverse myself to make this work for me, and sometimes it gives me a problem. If you keep going this way, a little east, which is that way, that's the exit of the building, of the site, and the entrance of the site. Okay, and so now you're headed back towards the ocean. So it's straight down. You're heading towards the west. You're heading towards North America. Excuse me, I'm congested. My apologies. And then you're almost down to the reactors. And that's the common spent fuel pool site. And then the 4 reactors are up there. And that's going to go head back out into the ocean. And hopefully that starts to head over towards reactor 5 and 6 at this point. And so the common spent fuel pool, reactor 4. The tsunami ran right through this and back out at a very high speed, as I showed you that documentation before. And so some of these reactors, like reactor 2 and some of reactor 1, would have went deep into the earth. And then the releases coming out of it, workers say that the ground under the plant is cracking and radioactive steam is coming up. And clearly this is the China syndrome. The melted core may be moving out of the buildings. But what was going on was it left the building right away at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And so at the stationary Geiger counters on the site, in 6 places, the Geiger counters were maxed out at 10 sieverts. And that was their maximum number, was 10 sieverts. 3 to 4 sieverts is considered a lethal dose to a human. 10 sieverts, you're going to melt your organs right away, and there's no way to survive for very long when that happens, right? And so in the back behind me, you see the steam. Now that's sped up about 100 times. They had abandoned the site. So this was the steam coming out of the ground, but there was also a record on the Geiger counters at 10 sieverts per hour in 6 places. So this was the China syndrome, hit water. The water, a liter expands 1,400 cubic feet or something in a millisecond. And so that splits the earth open. And what happens then, of course, is now this 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperature mass of many millions of pounds per building. Reactor 2 and Reactor 1. Reactor 2 burnt constantly for several days, the emissions. That's why the building stayed intact. It went down into the China syndrome right away. But it seemed to have shifted. Now, in the background of the building, there's a mountain. These sites are engineered. They spent $500 million on the engineering of the sites. And it's basically shale and stone, so it'll drain. Because of liquefaction is a huge issue, right? But it's also their old shit plan. So if it melts down, it'll go down to the old riverbed, the granite underneath it, that they had made. I can't remember what it was. I think it was like that. Some of that place was like 100 feet where they had engineered it with shale and boulders now, right? And so that's the plan, is if it melts down, they'll just spray water on it. The water will go all the way down to the riverbed underneath it. And then the river running down the mountain for millions of years, that's buried right now, but with shale and rocks, will push the radioactive material directly into the Pacific Ocean. Because otherwise, you get liquefaction on the site, all that stuff comes up to the surface, you have to abandon the site, right? So again, it starts to move out to sea. And I'm not gonna. We got other stuff coming up. We'll compensate for the stuff that I'm not going to cover right now. And so when you're moving out to sea, I was putting in some of these pictures that were released of the ocean side, for instance. But more importantly, I was putting in pictures, because quite a few of these pictures were released. Now, the Geiger counters that they're using are only suggesting there's 10, 20, 30 millisieverts, but you're not spraying regions there because of millisieverts. And then we know the reactors had blown up, even though they're pixelated. We know that. We know there's China syndromes at this site. We have no illusions about that. And we know that if you're spraying this stuff, it's because it's huge numbers. And so if you're stood up there with a Geiger counter in your hand, it's because you know nothing about nuclear. Now, when you see a picture like this, it means you really don't know nothing about nuclear. You know, because when you look at your Geiger counter, you only see 10, 20, 30 millisieverts at a nuclear meltdown. That should be, because the average person has no concept of this stuff, right? If they had any concept, they're not going to be stood up right there. You're not going to be stood up in the green zone where you sprayed the reagents to bind with the particulates. So they died that afternoon or the next morning, but no later than that. 5.5 millisieverts, really, at a nuclear meltdown. Isn't that something? Isn't that special? And back to the pictures from the drone. So the drone would fly out to the ocean, turn around, and then fly. It was giving you context, but, you know, there's 736 pictures, and this happened a number of times. And I'm sure there was other pictures they would have released, but I guess they weren't allowed to release it. So it was really surprising they released the pictures that they did release. Yeah, you know your boss hates you when you get that job right there, right? Oh yeah, take the Geiger counter and go over and stand up over there for me. When the guy in tattoos, or all the tattoos tell you to do that, just don't do it. Just run, baby. Jump in the car and say, hang on, I gotta get a smoke. And then put it in drive and get the frig out of there. Your life's worth more than anything the nuclear industry could ever offer you. They are humanity's enemy. And so imagine, you know, like this 1,200 miles of the coastline was really something. Yeah, whoever took that picture, he ran out from around the building, snapped the picture, and ran back in. This way it's so the drone pictures, back to the drone pictures, they're flying back in. They should change direction here. That's the pump house or the dry storage up right there. That gives you a bit more context, right? That's reactor 1, the first one in the very center at the top of the picture. Excuse me. Now remember, since Fukushima, they're calling Fukushima climate change, right? That's the cover story, apparently. The whale reached a population high of 27,000 in 2016, a time of grey whales, and dropped 16,000 to 16,650, which is 10,350 grey whales starved to death. Now, we covered a large portion of them, and there was an unusual mortality event for the grey whales, but there was also an unusual mortality event for the humpback whales. And on top of the unusual mortality event, where we've seen emaciated humpback whales showing up everywhere, like the entire migratory route, there was another 7,000 added to it. And there's an unusual mortality event for sperm whales, an unusual mortality event for fin whales, an unusual mortality event for beak whales in the United Kingdom, where they're not even supposed to see them because they live so far out in the Atlantic. And there was over 1,000 of them found at different stages of decomposition, right? Which meant, you know, you find about 10%, maybe if you're lucky, of the whales that died, which meant at least 10,000 beak whales had died. That's, you know, we've seen the millions of emaciated common murres, which dive 600 feet all day and feed on anchovy, squids, and sardines. And at the same time, there was over 1 million Cassini auklets, which are microscopic feeders. So you got two different spectrums of the food chain showing up emaciated over thousands of miles of the migratory coastline. And then all they do is scream conspiracy theories and then try to blow it off as climate change. When you get pulled over for a speeding ticket, tell the police you're speeding because of climate change and see where that gets you. Because that's what they're doing to you, right? The same thing. So that's reactor 1. The next one, you can almost see it. But now it's pixelated out. Reactor 2, reactor 3. And that's the pump house, or well, I don't know why I keep saying the pump house, is the administration building. I thought we were headed south in these pictures. Then it turns around. You're on the east side looking west towards the ocean. Now it's flying back in again. And so you're assuming there might be something over there, but I haven't been able to find it. There is a spot to your left that I can't remember where it's to. We got it in one of the folders where it was all pixelated out too. So it's flying back out towards the ocean, so they must be going to head south. Or I think they go way south and then or way north and then they come back south, reactor 5 and 6 in a little bit. So whoever got that job, man, my heart goes out to their family. They probably got offered $2,000 to go do that. Yeah, right there. That's the piece that took my life, is what he's saying. Yeah, you know your boss hates your guts when you does that. Got that job. So the drone is headed back out to sea. Just like my arms feels really heavy. It was a long day getting this. What I had to do was start a new session and take everything off my computer because you had to bring in 3,000 pictures in my operating system, which is just designed to do this stuff only, right? I use a TriCaster, and it's just designed to democratize filmmaking and media, right? It gives you the same equipment they're using. It's the exact same supplier, the same equipment. And you can buy a pretty nice brand new truck for the same price, let's put it that way. And the reason I went that way is because I wanted something that can handle any format, no matter what I threw at it. And just remember, they banned food by 55 countries and 14 prefectures. That didn't stop Japan from growing the food, and they even grew the food right alongside of one-ton bags of radiation. There was 30 million of those one-ton bags. And they were so arrogant and so hateful of humanity, they continued to grow food, which typically each of the prefectures were growing about 1 billion pounds at least of just rice. You were shipping to other countries, relabeling it to get it into your country if you happen to have a ban on it. Currently, it's around 14 countries still have a ban. Canada wasn't one of those countries, by the way. They removed all restrictions after 93 days. So the majority of the most radioactive food was shipped to Canada. And obesity rates in Canada are almost at 90%. In the United States, it's 74%. There was nothing near that pre-Fukushima. And obesity rates in Japan had almost doubled in the first year. Obesity rates after a nuclear event is a marker of radiation brain damage, according to the experts. Again, reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4 completely pixelated out. Common spent fuel pull across from reactor 4. Completely pixelated out. What was the purpose of pixelating all of that out? And why did he wait 10 years to release these pictures? And the tsunami ran right through that building. And that's the common spent fuel pull. So that would have had an enormous, at least 10 million pounds into it. I thought we'd be able to react. Here we go. We're heading over now, I think. Nope. Are we heading back up again? We're heading back up. See the top left-hand corner? If you look at the top left-hand corner, you see all the pixelation again. We covered that a little bit earlier. Why is all that stuff in your top center and left-hand corner completely pixelated out? I don't know. There is something sinister going on there. It's a very large section in it. That'll break away in a second. I'll go back a picture. Let me go back to that one more time. And there's nothing pixelated out until you get up. So there's a large section up there, right? It's not just that part on the road that I was showing you in the original stuff. Now you see that whole section up there is pixelated out. I'm not sure what was up there. There was rumors that they did have a weapons program at this site underground. But I don't know if that's the area or not. So now you're south headed north. You headed, that's reactor 4 in the center, and the common spent fuel pool is right across from it over there with the red behind it, which is transport truck containers that got washed up by the tsunami. So now you're heading, okay, now we're headed down. Oh, the picture. That was to give you pictures of the reactors without pixelation for you, just so you, in case you're not familiar with the story, you get a better context, hopefully. So coming up in the center is going to be the dry storage. And then coming up in the center top is reactor 5 is appearing, and reactor 6 is right behind it. And as you can probably see already, reactor 6 is pixelated out. First off, though, let's go in and look at the dry storage cast area for a minute, which is right here in the center. I'll go in all the way. Alright, so that's the dry cast storage section. The tsunami ran right through it. That's much lower than the reactor buildings. And then the top center, coming into your view right now, is reactor 5 and 6. Once I get to the closest one, I'll go back and I'll figure it out here in a second for you. So that's reactor 5. And so you can see that, and you can see the pump house right here, right? There's nothing pixelated out. And then reactor 6 is completely pixelated out. So why was reactor 6, which is clearly a long ways away from reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the common spent fuel pool, why is the pump house completely pixelated out? Why is the reactor completely and utterly pixelated out, including a large part of the property and the vent for the spent fuel pool at reactor 5 and 6, which is that tall chimney? That's always hemorrhaging radiation. That's how they vent the radiation from the fuel pools. The fuel pools are always splitting atoms. Let's go back one picture, go back another picture. I'll readjust for you. So you got reactor 5. It's not pixelated out, nor is the pump house. Sorry, I'll slow it down for you. But reactor 6 is. Why is reactor 6 pixelated completely out? And why is the common spent fuel pool completely pixelated out? Was there some kind of meltdown? That's what the poll is tonight, right? And I really should touch the poll, because otherwise, if the poll's not in the video, people won't get to see it later, right? Did the nuclear industry hide meltdowns? Or the fuel damage, or both, at Fukushima's common spent fuel pool and reactor 6? Well, they must have, because why is everything pixelated out, right? Oh man, what have I got done here? There. Let me check here, yeah. Okay. Alright, so behind me, remember that tank we were talking, those 3 tanks we were talking about at the beginning? And that the small one to your left up there, I said, got moved out of place. And the big one was crushed because the volume inside of it was low, and it meant there's a lot of air. And because the water volume was so high, it created a compression. And that's why it has that weird shape to it. There's other pictures coming up. We'll do more justice. The zoom on this thing is pretty amazing, isn't it? So why is reactor 6 and the pumphouse completely pixelated out? Okay, so then it takes you to this picture, which is east of the reactors. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the common spent fuel pool, and starts heading that direction again. And it goes out to the ocean, I think, and then turns around. And that's the back of the common spent fuel pool building. So the tsunami came all the way, at least in there right here, which meant it came right through the building. And so why is the building all the way to the ground, all the top and everything else, and the property completely pixelated out if nothing happened? And why weren't these pictures released, and why were they held on to for till 2021? Now, there was 4 million emails that were released, and you'll find links almost always underneath my video to those Nuclear Regulatory Commission website where you can go and peruse the 4 million emails that were released, and the incredible sites. We do presentations on that. We did last week, right? At the beginning of last week, I believe, or the week before. Like, we've been on a really information push because it was coming up to March, and then March showed up, and I was like, well, we better. So if you go back even a whole month, you'll find out I was doing an amazing amount of legacy stories. I was very sick in the last couple of weeks, and I still managed to. I can't believe I got the 5th show in this week, to tell you the truth. I wasn't liking it today, but I started to get excited as I started to get the whole thing put together. And so let me go backwards. So I put these pictures in to give you some more context to the seaside, because the pictures, the drones don't quite give you that perspective from down low, right? So I went through a lot of extra work today. I got inspired saying, well, if I don't put in some context for those who are not initiated. And the question is, what the hell is that? What is that? I don't know what that is, but whatever it is, it can't be freaking good. I got no idea what the hell is going on there. You have to give me a minute. I'll put some music on for a minute. I just got to go clean my sinuses because I get a little... If you made it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. And Medusa vomit. Just so sad, man. James, that's hilarious, buddy. Okay, I'll be back in a minute. I'm going to turn my volume down. I'm going to put my white chummy on my microphone so I don't forget to turn it back on. I'm going to play one of James's songs, actually. I was just laughing at. Meltdown Queen. Here we go. I'll be back in a moment.
Untouchable, yeah, she's unstoppable. Tick, tick, tick. Hearts on split, split, split. That's your move, boy. She's your meltdown hit. She walks in like a savior draped in radioactive silk. Promises the future, but her balance starts to tilt. Heels strike the ground, they call it innovation. But every move she makes is pure detonation. Tick, tick, watch her light the fuse. Her lips are like ignition, sparks in every word she speaks. She dances through collapse while her empire springs a leak. She's got blueprints in her pocket, cores hidden in her clutch, and every man who follows her forgets she burns too much. Snap, snap, she's the queen of chaos. Tick, 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 watch her take control. She's a meltdown queen with a heart so cold. Snap, 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 you're under her spell. She's the meltdown queen and she does it so well. Let's break it down. She keeps a coded suitcase, her secrets stitched in seams. Her nails are brushed with graphite, her plans are laced with schemes. They call her the solution, but her lies are all on tape. And when the fallout settles, there's no chance to escape. Now you're caught in her trap. Shaman Marianne. Oh, she's flawless, she's insane. Your dream girl, your nightmare, your chain reaction flame. She's untouchable, unshakable, impossible to tame. But when she melts down, boy, you'll forget her name. Tick, tick, she's the game you'll lose. Tick, 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 she's a chain reaction. Every step she takes leaves destruction. Snap, 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 her game is supreme. Meltdown queen, she's the star of your dream. You don't even know. Charm's a perfect weapon, her brilliance blinding clear. Her plans are sealed in circuits and she smiles to engineer. Every corporation crowns her of the prize, while the ocean full and cities vaporize. Tick, tick, she's the queen of disguise. Tick, 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 she's untouchable, unstoppable. She'll steal your soul, leave you unlovable. Snap, 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 what's left to say? Meltdown queen and she'll blow you away.
Awesome, man. Pumped up for the rest of the show here. I think I had it too loud for you. My apologies at one point there. Called a Meltdown Queen. The kick-ass. Woo! I had to go to the washroom and just like try to clean up my sinuses. It was pretty rough. Hopefully this will get me through the next hump. Yeah, Medusa vomit, man. It cracked me up. I was laughing when I was in the bathroom. I was like, shouldn't open up the comments. Because you're trying to clear your sinuses. It's a little hard when you're laughing. That's a good thing, though, I think. End up getting the whole song to play almost. So now that drone's headed back out to sea, and now it's headed back in. You can see one of the tanks is pushed right out into the road there. I didn't notice that one before for some reason. Right, he's right out in the road, that fella. So the tsunami definitely came that far. So now they got pixelations on the seaside. See that? Right there. Now the pixelation is on the back of the building. We didn't see that before. Hard cases. You can't trust the nuclear industry. That's the sad fact, right? You just so now you headed towards South Korea. You're headed east. You headed back up to that place that was pixelated out. It's going to be to your left if we make it. No. Let me see. Let me go back. Because I thought there was another spot alongside of me that was pixelated out. Or somewhere, anyway. Remember, we covered it the last time we done a... So now we're back up by Reactor 6. We're north of Reactor 6. Yeah, I was going to say don't quote me, but no, we're north of reactor 6. There's reactor 6 is coming into the picture. So I'm going to zoom up that way for a second before, not all the way, but just move it over a little bit. Oh, I can't do that. Do this. Here we go. It's too far. Why is reactor 6 pixelated out? Right? Because I got to get a few pictures here. And let me zoom back, just in case there's questions. So reactor 6 is completely redacted. But there's no explanation why it was redacted. And the pump house is redacted, which gives it 4,500 tons of water a minute. It's 1 million gallons. This is equal to 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks coming past your front door every minute. So reactor 5 and 6, here's some headlines of reactor 5 and 6, contained 8,000 tons of radioactive water. Will be transferred to a mega float. So why would it have radioactive water, and why is it pixelated? Because that's a pretty interesting question, I hope. Why did it have all this water? So 6,000 tons. Imagine 6,000 one-ton pickup trucks coming past your house in a half an hour. So it's a significant amount of water, right? Is what I'm trying to instill into you. I think that works too, right? I think the average person can relate to that. Because you're used to 1 or 2 or 3 cars coming past your house in rush hour at a minute, maybe. But imagine 4,500, because that's how much water you need a minute just per reactor. Is 1 million gallons, 4,500 tons of water to cool the reactor and to boil water. And each glass of water would typically have 1 billion creatures in it. 75 to 100 million of them would be the phytoplankton, the basis of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestering chain. And then the other 900 million creatures per glass of water is eggs and larvae and microscopic creatures and stuff. And so these things are genocide machines, omnicide machines rather. The cesium rises by reactor 5 and 6 discharge at the highest level in months. 2012 story. Now why would it be? There was nothing wrong with reactor 5 and 6. Look at it. Well, you can't really tell with reactor 6 because it's completely redacted and pixelated out. But I trust the government. I'm pretty sure there was nothing wrong with it. They would have told us, right? Cesium, right? So if cesium, for every cesium isotope produced, there's 100 times strontium-90. And then, when you hear cesium, that's code for curium isotopes, by the way. Plutonium, americium, plutonium, strontium, everything else. I used a stainless steel cup because I wanted really hot tea at some point. Try to cut your throat, the stuff in your throat. Hopefully by Sunday, I know I said that last Sunday. Hopefully by Sunday, I'm over this. This has been a long time now. Cesium rises by reactor 5 and 6, the highest months. TEPCO used the radioactive water from the reactors number 5 and 6 to spray through the Fukushima plant at 100 tons a day, which is equal to less than a garden hose. So you have 4 reactors melted down. So if you split a garden hose 4 ways, like a 3/8-inch garden hose that everybody has basically, or maybe a half-inch. And then a half-inch is about 120 tons a day at 30 pounds per square inch. So at 100 tons a day, it's less than a garden hose. So if you split a garden hose 4 ways and sprayed it on the 4 reactors, not counting number 6, I'm pretty sure you needed to spray something on number 6 by the sounds of it. So that was the cover story for number 6 for some reason. That would have been salt water. It's still very confusing, isn't it? What are you talking about 100 tons a day? Because the reactors need 4,500 tons each minute, each of the reactors. But 100 tons is only equal to a garden. It's not even a garden hose. Say a 3/8-inch garden hose, not a half-inch, but a 3/8 maybe. At 30 pounds per square inch is about 100 tons a day in 24 hours. So it's equal to 4 people stood up at the reactors pissing for 24 hours on the reactors, basically. Because if you split a garden hose 4 ways, it's like a big straw, right? How much water are you going to pour on something 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures? Does it make any sense at all? I'm going to venture into the comment section to see if anybody can figure that out. Hi, everybody. Does it make any sense? Does that make any sense? Like, so a garden hose is equal to 120 tons a day. Now you're going to spray on something that's somewhere 5 to 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. So are you going to spray a garden hose on reactor 1, a garden hose on reactor 2, a garden hose on reactor 3? It's a long way away, too, on top of that, right? It's a very long way away. So then, it seems to me is they were pumping it into the ocean, but claiming that they were pumping into the other building, right? That's what they were doing. They were pumping it into the ocean. That was the cover story. They were pumping it on the reactors. Like, that's the longest garden hose on the planet, by the way. White smoke from Fukushima Daiichi Reactor 6 turbine building. Well, the turbine building is right there. The reactor's right here. It's completely redacted and pixelated. And the turbine building, half of it in that particular picture is redacted. It really is a treat, though, to get these pictures tonight. So you can see the redactions all the way where my finger is, all the way there, the entire pump house, and then the entire, well, now you can actually see a little bit of reactor 6. Hang on here, I'll put that up really close for us. Right, because now you can see that over there, that part of reactor 6 and this part of the roof. Remember, that was all pixelated out earlier. Why is it pixelated out, though? Why is all of this pixelated out? Remember, these 2 reactors are a long way away from reactor 5 and 6, or from 1, 2, and 3. Reactor 6 now has 6 feet of contaminated water in the turbine building. And so remember, the turbine building, I call it the pump house, is completely redacted in most of the pictures. And in this, they're half redacted. Water in the reactor building may cause cooling system to fail. Water in the reactor building, well, reactor 6 never had no power, neither did reactor 5, neither when the drone was flying over. When the drone was flying over it, this was the March the 15th, I guess, or March the 16th. I would say March the 15th. So this was day 4. Let's say day 6. But you can see the damage down by the ocean where the tsunami came in. See how it tore apart the whole... Let's go down there for a second. I'm going to back up in a second. Look, you can see all the debris piled up and torn up. But you can see the whole wharf is totally... It's completely just ripped out at 200 miles per hour. That's some serious damage, isn't it? So let's zoom right in and then go along the shoreline, head south along the shoreline. My apologies for being congested. All of these cars are tsunami debris, right? Look at the damage there, man. That came ashore at several hundred miles per hour. Is that one pixelated out? No. Because that's what I'm doing right now. I'm looking for anything pixelated, but... And that's the pumps from the ocean. Major damage. Holy smoke. So now it's headed back. Now the base of that stack down at on the ground is lethal doses, even today. Cesium found near the drainage gates of reactor 5 and 6. They said 200 becquerels of cesium-134 cubic centimeter. How much was it in curium and uranium and americium and neptunium and strontium and the other 600 isotopes, I wonder? The level was higher than on the previous day when it was 2,300 times the legal limit. And so every time you hear the word legal limit, you should feel insulted that they said that. There is no legal safe limit, right? There's a legal limit they're allowed to get away with, but none of the limits are safe because it's anthropogenic man-made radiation. We're talking about fuel particulates, not physical atoms like cesium. We should be talking about particulates and then the 1,000 fission products that's going to be split from that, right? Cesium rises by reactor 5 and 6 discharge at the highest level in months. So reactor 5, that's what it looks like currently, and reactor 6. But the question was, why was it pixelated out anyway? What was the point to that? Which is that building right here. So now it's going to hit south again. You can see the 3 tanks in the center left. We talked about that at the beginning of the video. Those, my apologies. You're coming back now. That's reactor 1 is going to come into focus in a little bit. Maybe. Yeah. So you're looking at the bottom of the fuel pool of reactor 1, I think. You should be able to see it in this picture. That's crazy, eh? So what would it look like? And it's interesting that the whole building is unpixelated, yet out here on the road, it's all pixelated. So just bear with me for 1 second. Just going to show you the interior of the buildings. What the fuel pool looks like from the inside. I got it here. All right, here we go. So it's very deceiving, eh? When you don't understand the bigger picture. So that's the fuel pool right here. But that's the roof. So when you look at the roof, right, you're seeing that it's not a bulky something, right? It's just, it's like basically sheet metal steel or something on the roof. And so that's an unusual picture. You really don't get to see that picture very often right there, so that's pretty cool. Now we have the headlines that reactor 1 melted down in 50 minutes. But the question is, why is it pixelated? And the same thing with reactor 2. I'm going to zoom in on that for you. And I think that's why these pictures were released, so we would get these random pictures out of it. but why is all of this pixelated out? Why was reactor 6 pixelated out? Why is the common spent fuel pool pixelated out? Because most of the time these reactors in the pictures are pixelated out, right? So then all of a sudden you get some clean shots. So whoever done it must have been quitting that day or something, and they decided to leak out the documentation. And is that why nobody's ever covered it? That's the stump of reactor 3. Now from the front, if you're looking in from the front, this is what it would look like. Because you're looking at it from above. But the reactor core and the fuel pools are at the very top of the buildings. I didn't want to... I do need to bring up one of those pictures, so I'll just... Hang on, here we're almost there. Well, first off, reactor 3, that's the Medusa. That's the plutonium mixed oxide reactor. That detonated. That ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools right out of the buildings, and we've covered that. You can go to my playlist and find the documentation and the presentations on it. All right, let's keep trying to figure this out here. So then there's reactor 4. Now reactor 4, the top of it is mostly pixelated. Reactor 3 is 1/3 pixelated in this set, and then reactor 4 is 2/3 pixelated. Now I'm zoomed in, but I'll zoom back out for you. And that's the common spent fuel pool, and that's reactor 4. I'm practically joined at the hip. All right, so you got 4 meltdowns in a row. Clearly, there's stuff there they didn't... These pictures didn't get released for a reason. I don't know why they got released. Wish we knew the answer to that one, right? Why did they release this in year 10? In 2021. So now you're still headed south past the reactors. That's the incinerator. All reactors have incinerators, by the way. The incinerator building. It's just absurd to even suggest that that's real, but that's true. That's what they got there. All right, so now, until we start clicking through pictures, I don't know exactly where I'm to. We'll figure it out in a second. Now we're headed in another direction. Are we headed? I think we're headed towards the ocean. Yeah, we're headed towards the ocean. Let's go back and see. They're drawn, and when you see that, generally they're drawing you a line, right? We went from by the ocean to here. Oh yeah, remember that weird looking pond? Remember I talked about that earlier? That's up in the southeast corner, quadrant, whatever you want to call it. So now it's drawing you a line back to the reactors from right here for some reason. And those, remember, all nuclear power plants are dependent on external power. The fuel pools are dependent on external power, not batteries, not generators. On top of that, so that's a really idiotic. And so you can see damage from the broken road there from the earthquake. Significant damage from the earthquake up there. It's okay, and we're almost down to the reactors again. You can see more damage right there. Alright, so you're coming up to the reactors. The common spent fuel pool is right behind me over that way. You're headed right towards reactor 1 and 2, and there's 3s up in the top right hand corner where my Geiger counter is to it. And you head back towards the ocean. And let's keep flipping through these. Out towards the ocean. And I don't really glean anything from these particular pictures. I'm not really trying to for some reason. You can see the wharf, excuse me, the entrance is torn apart pretty good by the tsunami. I was pointed towards reactor 5 and 6 in the background. They're not pixelated in these pictures, so let's take a spin a moment there. Neither is the pump house. For number 6 is right there. The turbine building, sorry. It's not a pump house, it's a turbine building where they're generating electricity, right? The reactor number 5 is not pixelated in that picture. That's insane. I'm not sure what he's trying to prove right there. Is he measuring the crack in the infrastructure? I don't know. And these are the legs of the big stacks. So those are the legs of the big stacks that vents the fuel pools and the incinerator. They're significant sizes of stacks, right? I just put these pictures in to give you some ground perspective randomly. That's one of the cast machines. So that's where they take fuel, they put it in this very heavy container, 20-ton container or something, and so these things got multiple wheels. And I'm not sure if it was a smudge on the camera. I don't know why we're even talking about the cast trucks, unless they got washed out and they're trying to recover some of them. Maybe because we don't know when this picture in particular was taken, right? But that's what that thing is for. That's for putting the big 50,000-pound containers of fuel, and they got several tons of fuel rods inside of it, right? And back out to the ocean. And head back into land. And then you've got reactor 2 behind me, reactor 3 right there, and the other one is reactor 4. And the top left-hand corner is the common spent fuel pool. There's heavy pixelation going on. There is different pixelations, though, for a lot of these sets, right? And I think they might have been trying to release some of the information that they didn't want released, and they done it this way. Why did you wait 10 years? And I mean, you don't really appreciate it when you first start looking at the pictures unless you zoom in. It's very confusing because there's so many pictures. So you're trying to find something tangible, you're shooting through the pictures, and you got to realize you got to go all the way back and zoom in on everything. So now it just jumped south. If it's going to go this way, then we're headed north. So we're south of the reactors, I would imagine. Because you got the water to your right. So yeah, that's the pump house, or the incinerator. And then I threw a few of these pictures in there. The scary pictures, the world's most scariest pictures. Whoever's doing this died that day. So that's millisieverts. Again, you're talking about where reactor cores were rejected right out of the buildings, right? So whoever got that job would have died that day. Once you get these Geiger counters exposed to a big dose, by the way, they're basically useless. So he's got 3.3 millisieverts, is it? And a nuclear meltdown. He's probably the luckiest guy on the entire site by the looks of that. I like his boots. They're going to stop you from a nuclear meltdown. They'll save you. How heartless is the International Atomic Energy Agency? How come they're not there? It's better that 1 million scientists die than a single homeless person. So there's incredible propaganda. And you see this the green region behind him? Like he's in a nuclear wasteland. I guess they're trying to say that the green region that they were spraying the bind with the fuel particulates that are splitting atoms worked, right? And they give them a shitty Geiger counter and say, good, because like there is no nuclear scientist. Got to come out and say, well, that's me. Holding on to that. I got a selfie of me to prove it. You won't see selfies in this stuff, right? Dead man tells no tale. I can guarantee you that story, we'll never know what happened to that story and that story. That's one of the craziest pictures you'll ever see. Oh. I'm just blabbering now. I've done some pretty hard shows for the last 2 weeks. Hardcore. I feel good about it now. I'm looking forward to hate to say, but I'm looking forward to next week. Stories. I'm not finished yet. I still got quite the pile here. Yeah. Turns out I'm allergic to onions. And I love onions. They take the piss out of me now. And so I finally give them up. I'm doing much better. Right away too, right? As soon as I give up the onions. So he's writing it on his leg on his paper suit. That's what his boss told him to do. Take a picture. Now get down and lick those green puddles. Lick them. Get down there and lick them. I'll give you an extra $50 if you get down there and lick one of those green puddles. I can see that guy with all the tattoos is probably saying to him, laughing. They probably told these people they're going to give him $5,000, right, for that day's work. And the problem is they died. They died at lunch hour or something. Yeah, there was one story of 800 of these guys were cremated, and their ashes were in these urns. These urns were given to a Buddhist monk or something, and he was too stupid to get out of the nuclear wasteland. And somebody had interviewed him, and he was bragging about all these urns, right? How they take care of the spirits of the Fukushima 800. Well, like, if that thing was Sieverts, he would have ran away a long time ago. So they can't give him a real Geiger counter because he's just going to run away. We're like, boss, hey, boss. Probably doesn't even speak Japanese on top of that. Oh shit, let's keep going. To me, these are the scariest, most frightening pictures I've ever saw. You know he died that day, right? Got a Geiger counter that doesn't work, and he's in a nuclear wasteland. And you write the numbers on your pants legs because you won't live to tell the story. They'll just tie a rope on you. I get another homeless guy, go and put ropes around your feet. You give him $1,000 cash. And then they'll just winch you back, and then they'll take a picture with a drone or something to get the numbers that you found. And they know that for every number you're seeing that says millisieverts is a sievert. When the homeless guy in the paper suit drops dead, pick up the Geiger counter and keep walking. That's basically the commands you were getting. Don't forget to write everything on your leg. It's just absurd, boy. So he's trying to justify whoever set up this nightmare that by spraying the green region to bind with the fuel particulates to stop the splitting of the atoms from the dreaded red circle. Yeah, you see that red circle over there? $200 cash right now. You walk over there and put your Geiger counter down there. No, of course not. It can't hurt you. Ask the guy with the hose spraying the green regions everywhere. That's some scary picture. You know, he's dead. He never lasts a day at all, that feller. His organs probably melted within an hour or something. Man. They didn't even give him any duct tape for his boots, for goodness sakes. Nah, you don't need it. You'll be okay. Duct tape's expensive. Yeah, no duct tape on his boots. He's out there spraying. Like, you're spraying. At least put duct tape on his boots. Don't be total scumbags. You know, he's dead. Deader than a dead. That's the... So the green region is meant to bind with the fuel particulates from the meltdowns and from the detonations. Literally... You are in the worst place conceivable. That's your job, that's because you're expected to die. No, Dana, that's a nuclear scientist. Put your mommy's... Again, why don't you just duct tape his boots? Well, Dana, he's not going to live for a couple hours. What's the point? Might as well get it over with. Yeah, just go over and spray this stuff. It's just a precaution. You'll be totally fine. Did I mention we're going to give you $5,000 cash when the job is over today? That's right. When you get on the bus, you get $5,000 cash. And of course, he doesn't make it to the bus. And he's not. If he does, he's not worried about cash. And then they're going to take him to Tepco's hospital, where that's the end of that puppy. That's a hero, that guy. That's the hero. There is no such thing as a nuclear scientist hero. That's strange. You got a hero for everything else, but you haven't got one for the nuclear industry. Yeah. Get out of the way, George. Do you got any idea how insane that picture actually is? Meant to die, right? So what you're looking at is the most frightening spot in human history. Green puddles at a nuclear meltdown, you say? Couldn't he dyed it another color? Did he really need to put it green? Wasn't that like an insult to us to do it? That I don't know. No, you'll be fine. You'll be on the sake tonight. We'll get your carton of smokes, all the sake you can drink. Just go over there for a minute. They were doing that, to make no mistake about it. When the first man drops dead, the next man goes over and picks up the Geiger counter and keeps on walking. That's like a standing joke at the International Atomic Energy Agency's coffee room, right? The most cold-blooded people in human history are the International Atomic Energy Agency. Well, they're not really humans, are they? I think it should be illegal to call them people human. Look at all the homeless over there in the corner. No, I'm not going, man. I'm not doing it. You can't make me. I'm not going. No, you go pick up the Geiger counter next. It's your last day. You go pick up the Geiger counter. Man, that is unbelievable. It's a picture that shouldn't exist, eh? No human should be there doing that. They get like one of the pump trucks from the airports to blast that stuff all over it. They don't need to send a human there. They're only sending the human there just to be mean, see? Because that's what evil does. There it is. There's me propaganda for today. Big dollars tonight. Sake for everybody tonight. You won't live to see another day, might as well. So you're south, you're at incinerator by reactor 4 and the common spent fuel pool to your left, coming in the site. So 10 million pounds. You got 10 million pounds gone over there and about 6 million right there. I'd venture to say that's the world's worst nuclear accident. Just those two buildings. You got a total of 18 reactor cores melted down. Well, the common spent fuel pool actually is would be around 16 reactor cores, I guess. 20 reactor cores, 16 to 20 reactor cores. And we got no evidence that building exists. We do know they had a criticality there, and we do know that they had a recriticality there. So it meant there was a chain reaction. We know the tsunami ran right through the building at 100 miles per hour or more, right? We know reactors detonated and ejected their inventories at a very high rate of speed. Reactor 3 cooked off at around 200,000 degree higher temperature than reactor 1, 2, and 4. Because it was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor. Even today, they still haven't cleaned the roofs off of those turbine buildings. And that's the dry cask storage. Who knows how many of the dry cask storage got washed out to sea. They have to be cooled all the time, right, in that building. And so if they got washed out to sea, at some point they're going to melt down. That's the problem with the fuel. If you leave it alone, at some point it's going to melt down. So reactor 5 and then reactor 6. And see, in these pictures, reactor 6 is pixelated out. Remember, there was one or two pictures we looked at earlier where it wasn't completely pixelated out, right? Because here, everything is pixelated. See that? The whole roof? Sorry. The whole roof is pixelated out. And the pump house. The entire pump house is pixelated out. Remember, there was those couple of pictures earlier where it wasn't. Not the entire, well, not the entire roof anyway. So when the boss wasn't looking over their shoulder, 736 pictures, a lot of these bosses that are getting their employees to do this stuff is not going to be looking over their shoulder the whole time. They're too busy being scumbags, basically. Why did they redact all these pictures, and why did they wait 10 years? I don't know. But why is reactor 6 pixelated out? Now they turn around facing south. Why is reactor 6 completely pixelated out? And south is towards Tokyo and reactor 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now they're pointing north again. Go north. Now we're back up in the south southeast or southwest corner. I'll tell you in a minute. Southeast. Where's those? Oh, we're headed back. Now we're headed back up to that section. No, we're headed back down. That's the common spent fuel pool. Just flash through the rest of them. Might as well get through it. It's not going to hurt to keep going. Back down to the ocean. Back out into the ocean. Let me see. We're just going to flash through this stuff. Not flash, but I guess yeah, flash in the context of flashing. And then we're headed back in. The turbine buildings. There's not really a lot now to be gleamed. I could be wrong. We're looking for something less pixelated, right? That's why we're doing the extra stuff here. That's the administration building in the center. Now we're headed. Now we're on the north side of reactor 6 and 5. And you can see everything is pixelated. I'll center it for you. But now you can kind of see some of the top of the building where some of the pictures are completely pixelated out. So you're just hoping to get that little one of those pictures that's not completely, they didn't pixelate everything, right? But it does raise an interesting, let me go backwards 1 second. It does raise an interesting question. Because, yeah, we better look at that. Notice how it's pixelated now. In most of the pictures, the bottom part of the stack is completely pixelated out. So I'm just curious. Can I see any kind of damage to that stack? Because we don't really get a clean shot of it very often, do we? And it's pretty amazing pictures for way back then. Like quality-wise, this is 14 years ago. Most of the cameras you were assuming were 1 or 2 million pixels, right? I'm not seeing anything in particular that stands out. I don't know about that section right here though, right? I don't understand why it looks that way. We know one of the stacks they had to chop a large chunk out of it. It took almost 2 years because you can't go near these things. They're 15 to 20, 25 sieverts. Something I got to think about and look at the pictures later when we get more latitude. You might be able to see those 3 drums a bit better this time. Not quite. Yeah, you can kind of see how... Well, this one here is supposed to be on the other side of that one. We showed that picture earlier before the tsunami came in, I think. Let me boot around here for a minute. I don't know. I'm just having a little boo. Why not? So we're headed back towards reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4 in that order, which is south. And the common spent fuel pool was across the street from reactor 4, which is the last one in this direction. On the top right-hand side is the common spent fuel pool. Let's look in at reactor 1 again. This is a different view. Yeah, there's no fuel pool. We know there's no fuel pool there because we have all the documentation, right? But see, there's not really anything to cook off at the top of those buildings. And so then those buildings, the plumes, just start with that for a minute. This model, think of a snowstorm coming out of Fukushima. And this is a snowstorm. We're at day 10. And we're at day 15. We're at day 20. This is 20 days of a snowstorm. The snow never melts. Snow never goes away. Never stops snowing. So this is 31 days of snowstorm. But you can see snow, right? It's a pain in the ass. You got to get tires. You got to get a shovel and everything else. Blah, 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 blah. You got to wear this. You got to wear that. So this is the same thing as a snowstorm that covers the whole planet in 31 days and never stops snowing, never goes away, except it's radiation. And this model is the French government at 1 million to 10 million times pre-Fukushima background levels of cesium-137. And cesium-137 pulses energy 600 feet every second for each atom. There was 1 million, say 10 to 20 million atoms per cubic meter of air in the French government's assessment, which is based on a very, 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 very conservative amount. It's not based on the actual inventories of 4 reactors, let alone the inventories of the fuel pools, which is another 32 reactors. And they're gone too. And all the models basically agree with that model. So this was another cesium model to your left based on 26 days. And this model in the bottom right-hand corner is 19.5 days, 468 hours. This is 19.5 days, the whole planet's covered. 26 days, the whole planet's covered. 21 days, the whole planet's covered. All the models agree, right? That's the consensus. And then we know we have documentation of numbers, of like 220 million atoms per liter of rainfall in Canada, United States. That was the Ottawa study out of central Canada. You have a study of 20 million particles of iodine-121 rather, because it's most likely curium is what it was. They're calling it iodine so that you stop paying attention after. And they'll tell you, oh, it's got an 8-day half-life. So the average person, oh, well, that was a month ago, so it doesn't matter, I guess. And they just move on, right? Because critical thinking skills is not taught for quite a few decades now, right? So most people are not going to question the government. The worst words you can hear is, hi, I'm the government, I'm here to help you. That's the worst things you could ever hear. They've never succeeded in helping anybody, and the great success in destroying everybody. So if you hit it, that's the common span fuel pool. Clearly something happened there. We don't know what happened. We do know they had criticalities there. You hit it south along the coastline. And let's get through the rest. There's not many pictures, all things considered, about 100 pictures or something. At the rate we're going, we'll get through in pretty quick time because we basically, just for posterity, are showing these particular pictures, right? We've already covered. We're looking for any things we didn't notice before, because you're always going to notice things, right? You can see smoke coming out of reactor 4. See smoke coming from reactor 4. Smoke, that's reactor 2. There's not smoke but radioactive emissions from the nuclear meltdowns. At reactor 1. At reactor 2. at reactor 3. And there is nothing left, right? And you see those big chunks hanging off the buildings? They're so big, if they were, they're like beams for each of the panels. You could actually turn an SUV around on one of them. It might be a 5 or 6 point turn, but you could turn an SUV if they were like the top of the. I'll just bring it over for you, hopefully. So think of them as this piece here. You can actually turn an SUV around on that right there. You can park it there comfortably and get out. And you don't have to worry about walking off the side of the building if this was just a structure, right? So you'd have huge chunks. Sit back here to see here. And I didn't add any extra pictures down here because I didn't think I'd make it this far tonight. So, oops. So we're just going through the raw pictures. And now look at the pixelations of the pictures. Like it's overload now, right? Isn't it? So that's reactor 4, and that's the common spent fuel pool with 10 million plus pounds into it. That's significant reduction. And same thing with reactor 3, significant reduction, right? Like 100%. So his boss must have done these particular pictures and say, this is how I want it done. Yes, Masa. You're heading east again now. And this one even got the containers from the transport trucks in the background. Let's zip down there for 1 second, redact it. We haven't seen that before. So somebody else done these pictures. They wanted everything redacted. So that all those red blobs up there are transport truck containers. They're all redacted. Let's keep her going here. Now we're headed east. Now we're changed. Now we're headed. That's the incinerator building and reactor 4. Now it's not completely redacted. And you can see. So this is quite a long time later. They got that cement truck there, allegedly pouring water in on the fuel pool, right? And then the caveat for that statement, I'll show it to you. If they're pouring water in on the fuel pool, if that's really what's happening, let me explain this to me coming up. Oh. Well, I'm looking for the other picture. Let me give you this picture. That picture. That's reactor 3 and 4. Where's the fuel pool in those pictures? Oh, that's right. There's no fuel pool. There is no building. But here we go. If that's the fuel pool of the building, right? Why do they have 4 people in a perfect fuel pool pretending that they're 150 feet above the stump in 2013 and 2014? All right, that's a pretty good question, isn't it? So we're heading north again. That's the dry cash storage building. That was completely wrecked. And then up here, we're going to get another picture of those tanks because I got this thing about tanks for some reason at nuclear sites. Now you can start to see how it was deformed. Pretty crazy. I remember one of my detractors, every time I would show that picture, they would say, that's not Fukushima. Dana doesn't know what he's talking about. Pretty mean. People like being mean, right? They get some kick out of it. The detractors, the so-called, not detractors, but the propaganda machines. So it's completely redacted, reactor 6 and the pumphouse in these pictures. You're still heading north. Now you're headed away from South Korea towards North America, which is west, or towards the west coast of North America. This is the common spent fuel pool. And this one, they haven't redacted all the transport truck containers in the center there. And tsunami, you can see even cars are washed up in that pile too. Because that's where the tsunami came, right through the building, which is the common spent fuel pool. And it's not a very high building either. So we know the tsunami ran right through it, and that we most likely lost that inventory too, which is 10 million more pounds. But see, the ultimate, because like you're looking at it from back in that day, but when you look at it in 2013, right, it's easy to appreciate that there is no fuel pools whatsoever because they got everything gutted for reactor 3 and 4, and I just kind of showed that to you, but. All the academic community knew that fuel pools were gone. And if you didn't, in 2013, when this... Now, I put those two pictures together. You'll never find those two pictures anywhere but here. And the idea was for any academic, and I used to send this out in emails to all kinds of academics and journalists and that, and ask them, send me back to fuel pool. Of course, that's not going to happen, right? Back out to sea. We're not too far away now from the finish. One last look, I think. Can't be that many pictures left. Let me see. 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 pictures. It's not bad, we got through it. Somebody be trying to be funny, gave me that picture. I can change it, right? I'm not going to. Alrighty. Yeehaw! Long week this week, holy shit. It's the anniversary though, we had to push our luck, right? Lots of good stuff this week. Just every show was an amazing show. It was pretty reasonable for most shows. I kind of get cranky sometimes. I see the death of a planet. That does it to me once in a while. Woo doggy. 12:47. So let me see. 12:47. Just how many is in this one here? Not tonight now, mind you, but. Let me just delete everything that we covered. I'll tell you what I got left. So that was 12:47, right? Right there. 12:47, and I got 300 left. So that was 950. Clicks tonight. 950. Crazy, eh? That's crazy. Ooh. You do all that work and then like poof, it's all gone. But it's a great story. A lot of documentation. I probably make a few mistakes. Nothing serious, but when you're covering so much, when you had it for so long, right? Alrighty. Ooh. Oh, everything hurts now. My body's like, okay, don't give it up. Let people get on with their lives here. Yeah, I will, so that's what I'll do. Alrighty, let me see here. So it was a good show anyway. This the anniversary week show. The anniversary was last week. On the 11th. We still been doing anniversary shows ever since. Just to try to get people's attention so that we can have a conversation about. We need to build a lot of gallows so we can hang all these people, see? One thing I made, when I work really hard, I don't want to, it's like a good movie, you don't want it to end sometime. Whatever, here we go. This night has to end because I'm tired. Environmentalists. Did the nuclear industry hide the meltdowns or fuel damage? I've been pretty polite. At the Fukushima Common Spent Fuel Pool, which is bizarre pictures, and Reactor 6, which is bizarre pictures. We can't explain it away, right? We'll close that down in a few minutes. I'm going to go over and look for a closer. Whoa, I think we got lucky. Difficult to return zone. Yee doggy. I love it when I see a new one, eh? So James got a new song out. Difficult to return zone. He's got more songs than anti-nuclear songs the entire planet combined has ever produced in history. That's pretty friggin' special, you ask me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn down my external audio. We're going to light up that, make sure we get it to 1080 before we start playing it. Wow. And we'll see everybody, unless there's something major happens the weekend, I'm probably not going to be back until Sunday. I'm going to adjust the volume for you in real time. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night, a great day tomorrow and the weekend for you and your loved ones. We'll see you soon.
Dosimeters on traffic lights, the warnings flash, the roads divide, thresholds set, the limits bend, a year's decay won't mark the end. The signs remain, the doors are locked, a child's toy left in the rocks. A river flows, but none will drink. The market stands, the scales don't sink. The fields are tall, but not for hands. No way of trade, no need for plans. No trade, no plans. Oh, difficult to return zones. So difficult to return. Marked as safe, yet left behind. They say the air is clean, the roads are clear. Then why does silence settle here? Difficult to return. The roads persist, but none arrive to return and rebuild their lives. Reconstruction, revitalization are difficult to carry out. Oh, difficult to return zones. So difficult to return. Marked as safe, yet left alone. They say the air is clean, the roads are clear. Then why does silence settle here? stay locked, the soil won't heal. Get left alone. They say